What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie, and for over 15 years, I've helped thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday lives and worked with thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today I want to talk to you about Black History Month. It's February 2022, and this is Black History Month. First, I want to say Black History Month, it shouldn't be just something that we celebrate every month. Black history is American history, and to be American, you need to understand the role and involvement Black people and Black culture have played in this country. But I do enjoy that there is a time where we kind of highlight that in the year, because I think without that, just the way that oppression and privilege and bias works, it would be forgotten. And for me, this Black History Month is probably a little bit more special than any others because I'm releasing a project that means more to me related to Black history than anything I've ever done professionally. So what happened was myself and my colleague, Dr. Adam Frower, we were having a conversation. This was in like early 2021, late 2020. And we were talking about the civil rights movement for whatever reason, whatever brought it up. We were talking about the civil rights movement. And when you look around the world that we were living in at the time, and to a large degree still living in, you could see there was just so much racial tension and so much hatred and so much violence, and the rhetoric politically was something that neither Adam nor I had ever seen before. And I started thinking, what would Dr. Martin Luther King and Medgar Evers and so many other, what would they say and or do if they were around today? And I started thinking about all the people who have made so many sacrifices throughout history. And I started thinking, what would they think about the way the world has gone and the way the world had shifted? Somehow we came up with this idea. This project was, we didn't think we had learned all the lessons that we could have and should have from the civil rights movement. So Adam and I wanted to go to the places where historical events took place. And we wanted to hear the stories and share lessons that we thought the world could benefit from. We wanted to go to the places where significant moments in the civil rights journey happened and where significant people made significant sacrifices. We wanted to go to those places and learn what you couldn't learn in a textbook. We wanted to learn what we thought the world needed to experience. And we went on a journey that was life-changing. We went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, the place where the Black Wall Street massacre happened. We went to Little Rock, Arkansas, and visited the school where the Little Rock Nine integrated the school system there. We went to a place called Glendora, Mississippi, which is where Emmett Till was pulled from a riverbank. They're not really sure where he was killed, but his body was found on the side of a river by a man fishing in 1955. We went to Money, Mississippi, where Emmett Till met a white woman and whistled at her, according to reports. And that's what led to the mob ending his life. And went to Memphis, Tennessee, where Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. We went to Jackson, Mississippi, visited Medgar Evers' home and the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. I mean, it was the most life-changing experience I'd ever been on. Like, to realize how far we had gotten in letting our hatred govern us and letting our hatred control us and letting our hatred impact how we treated one another. And to be there with my best friend, Adam, who happens to be white, was just a life-altering situation for both of us. We still talk about it now. And today, it's Monday that the first video came out in this series. We're going to be releasing videos throughout Black History Month. And I want you guys to enjoy these videos. I want you to celebrate these moments. And I hope that they touch you as well. And I would encourage all of you to create a kind of a bucket list of places to go visit where significant things happen, because you can still feel the power of what happened in those places. You can still feel the influence of what went on in those places. It'll change your life, I can promise. So thanks for being here today as we celebrate Black History Month 2022. Please do me a huge favor and share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from this message today. And don't forget to head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you consume your podcasts and rate this podcast, subscribe, of course, and leave feedback. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie, And for over 15 years, I've helped hundreds of thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday lives, and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today, as we continue to acknowledge and celebrate Black history in February 2022, which I know is kind of an American holiday, kind of an American concept or American thought. But today I want to talk to you about someone who is not American, a Black man that I think contributed more to our society than maybe any other Black person ever. When I say society, I mean global. And that man is Nelson Mandela, who they refer to as Madiba in South Africa. And Madiba has always been one of my personal heroes. Madiba has always been one of the people I admire most in this world. He's one of the very few people in the history of the planet who can say that they individually stopped civil war. In the late 1990s, when Nelson Mandela got out of prison, civil war was like guaranteed in South Africa. Like it was almost like the people living in South Africa knew that civil war was going to happen, like completely knew that civil war was going to be taking place. And the biggest reason that it didn't is because Nelson Mandela had the ability to walk out of prison and ask 40 million South Africans to be peaceful, to allow him to negotiate with the government of South Africa. And that stopped the violence and the war. It didn't stop the problems. I mean, South Africa still has problems to this day. But, you know, in the 1990s, like a civil war would have had a global impact. In the 1990s, it might have had a nuclear impact. And Nelson Mandela, through the power of kindness and forgiveness and the power of his heart, was able to change that. Maybe the biggest highlight of my life, when I got invited to go to South Africa for the very first time, there was a conference in Cape Town, South Africa. So I went to South Africa to lecture in Johannesburg. And then there was a conference in Cape Town. And while I was at the conference, I found out that the prison where Nelson Mandela spent 18 of his 27 years in prison, called Robben Island, and they've turned it into a museum, like a place that you can tour. And I got to go there. I got to ride the ferry that Nelson Mandela went to. I got to go into the room where he was assigned his prison number, which is 46664. And I got to walk through the prison yard where he endured pain and torture and struggle. And I got to visit the prison cell where he stayed for all that time. And I got to walk the footsteps of Nelson Mandela. I got to that long walk to freedom. I got to take some of the footsteps along that walk to freedom. I was also able to visit his house. I went to a place called Orlando, which is in Soweto. Soweto is short for Southwest Johannesburg, so they call it Soweto. And I got to visit the house that he was released to when he got out of prison. There's a home, this brick home in Soweto. And I got to visit that. I got to visit the capture site where he was arrested, and it's just outside of Durban, South Africa. And there's this little plaque on the side of the road, like, this is where Nelson Mandela was arrested. And there's a huge, beautiful monument. And in all these places, the one thing that strikes you is the dignity of the man. The one thing that strikes you is the power of forgiveness. The one thing that strikes you is the power of healing. What you realize is that one person can make a difference. What you realize is a man whose journey took him to prison for 27 years also caused him to be the president of South Africa and rewriting his country's history. And I think about that and I think, when we endure pain and struggles and we endure suffering and wrongdoing and someone does something wrong to us, you should never lose your dignity. You should never lose your capacity to forgive, because not only does it set you free, but it puts you in line to accomplish even bigger, brighter things. There has never been, in my opinion, a greater example of this than the life of Nelson Mandela. There has never been a greater example of this than the accomplishments of Nelson Mandela. And on this day, in Black History Month, on this day, as we acknowledge the contribution that Black people have made to our society, I want to take a moment to celebrate Nelson Mandela, who, though might not have been American, set an amazing example for all of us to follow. And I am inspired by him to this very day. I am inspired by what he accomplished to this very day, and it's amazing. So I want you guys to think about, who are the Black leaders that inspire you? Who are the Black leaders from history that inspire you? Who are the Black leaders that have made a difference in the way that you live and think about things, because I just think it's such a powerful way for us to be thinking. So thanks so much for being here today. This is a super important topic to me. So if you wouldn't mind, please do me a huge favor and share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also rate this podcast, please, please, please. I really want you guys to show up and rate the podcast and leave feedback. I love listening to your comments, and I will see you tomorrow. What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie, and for over 15 years, I've helped hundreds of thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday life and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today we're going to continue talking about Black History Month and a really important topic, certainly to me, and I also think to everyone it should be, and that is diversity. You know, I work in the field of psychotherapy, and probably the most proud accomplishment I've had in this field, the way that I have contributed to this becoming a more diverse field. Like, I'll never forget when I entered into the field of psychotherapy, it was just so dominated by white people. There were very few, if any. The first conference I went to was in 2008, and there literally was not a single African-American besides myself that was delivering a workshop and giving a lecture. And that really, really matters because representation matters. See, the more counselors we have from a more diverse background, and the more service users we have that are taking advantage of utilizing services and improving their mental health. Because the way we show up in therapy impacts how our clients can participate in and connect with their counselors. Like, I can remember first job I had working at an agency, there was this young man that wouldn't talk to me. He literally just wouldn't participate in the session. Didn't matter what I did, what counseling tips or tricks I pulled out of my hat, no matter what I did to kind of try to engage this kiddo, he would never, ever talk to me. And then one day I was playing basketball and I hurt my knee really, really bad. And I had to have a brace on my knee. So I had to go to work dressed in a hoodie and basketball shorts because I couldn't get this brace over or even under my pants. So I got permission from my boss to be dressed very athletically. And it just so happened that on that day I was seeing this client. And this client was a teenage Black kid from the inner city. And on this day, he talked to me. He talked to me like, you know, you would want your clients to talk to you. And I asked him what was different. And he said, "You don't feel like a suit to me today." And I never forgot that, because sometimes we need to remember that just the way we show up in therapy impacts the way our clients participate in the therapy. And I think we forget that. Like, some kids are going to have a more easy time talking to me than they will Dr. Adam Thrower. Some clients are going to have an easier time talking to Adam than they will talking to me. Diversity matters because it gives more people access to services. And because the service that we offer increases and impacts people's mental health, we have to take this very, very seriously. And I endured a lot. Like, there were people in this profession who were not happy to see an African American gaining prominence and status in this field, and they engaged in really unprofessional, hurtful, horrible behavior to try to have a negative impact on my career. But like I said, I think maybe the proudest thing that I've ever accomplished is forcing diversity into our field. Over time, I now sit on multiple boards in this field when those boards had previously been only available to white people. There are communities, there are organizations, there are associations in this field that up until my joining had never had a Black person on their board in a position of leadership, ever. Literally, not one. And that matters because people in the field need to know that there's an opportunity for them to ascend and grow. And the more people that are of various backgrounds, ethnicities, nationalities, and genders, and sexual orientation, and religious groups, the more people that we have from all of those places, then the more opportunity we have to engage more people to increase their mental health, which is what this work is all about. You know, I think, and every Black History Month, I can't help but think about Martin Luther King Jr. and Medgar Evers and Malcolm X and all the leaders that were working to make America accept its diverse and rich history and understand that America's strength is rooted in its diverse background. America, regardless of how we all got here, we're here. And America's strength is actually rooted in that diversity. And I think in our field, that can be true as well. All of us have had a positive impact with diversity, whether we recognize it or not, because so many cultures have contributed to what we experience in our everyday lives. Maybe it's our cuisine, our television habits, our exercise practices. No matter what it is, think about how diversity has increased the joy that you experience in your life, and I promise you will be greater for it. Thank you for being here today. If you wouldn't mind, do me a huge favor and share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you consume your podcasts and rate this podcast, leave feedback for this podcast, and subscribe to this podcast. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. What's up, everyone? For over 15 years, I've helped thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday lives and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today I want to talk to you about something that's really, really important to me as we continue to celebrate Black history, and that is what it is like to be Black in America. Because I can tell you, I knew being Black in America was complex, even as a young child. I can remember growing up, and I mean elementary school age, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and studying history and things like the Declaration of Independence, where it's all men are created equal. And then studying the Civil Rights Movement and really wondering, how to reconcile that in one document, in one thing we're studying in school, it says all men are created equal. And then there was this very long period of time that my parents grew up in, long after this country was formed and after we had documents like the Declaration of Independence and the Emancipation Proclamation and the Civil War. There are laws based upon race where people got different treatment and had different abilities and had different access based upon race. It was a very unusual thing for a third grader and a fourth grader to try to reconcile. And from those early days in my childhood, it was very clear that the relationship between Black America and this country is complex and multi-layered. And then I fast forward to the election of 2016. It was a very strange time for me. I'll never forget. For me, the election began when I was in South Africa at some point in early 2016. When there was a news alert that Donald Trump had announced he was running for president. And I was getting a ride from my hotel to the venue where the conference I was lecturing at was going to be taking place. And a good friend of mine was giving me this ride, and she turned to me and she says, "What are the chances he has of becoming president?" And I said the honest truth at the time. I think the chances are very low. And I explained to her that occasionally somebody will try to run for president. Ross Perot was the example I used. And, they'll get 5-10% of the vote, but that'll be about it. And I thought the same thing about Donald Trump. I thought he's going to get some sort of fringe number of people supporting him because I knew about his rhetoric and I knew how racist, misogynistic, xenophobic he had been. And I just thought the American public would not support someone doing that. And through the election cycle, he did exactly what I anticipated he would do. He said really horrible things about large groups of people, Mexicans, women, Black people, people from Islam communities. He said these really horrible things, and I just thought there's no possible way that people are going to support someone using this language, regardless of their political affiliation. If you want to be conservative, be conservative. If you want to be Republican, be Republican. But I thought that Americans would not be able to tolerate someone using the language that was used in those situations. But I was wrong. And the hard thing was watching people that I knew, that I loved, that I trust, supporting that language, or at the very least staying silent while that language was taking place. I think the hardest thing about being Black in America is learning that people who come from different social location statuses are blind to the plight of people who live a different world here in this country. Because I would try to explain to people very, very close to me that here's what it's like when you are supporting someone who is using this language. Like, here's what it's like. I got called the N-word more times during the election cycle in 2016 than at any other point in my life. And I tried to explain that to a very, very close friend of mine, and I'll never forget them saying, but what does that have to do with Donald Trump? Now, I was like, it has everything to do with Donald Trump because he's empowering people with racist views. He's empowering people with hate-filled language. He's empowering people with hate in their heart. And we had to bear the brunt of that hate. And it was nearly impossible to get people to see it who don't live it. And as a Black man, I live it every day. And it was a really, really hard thing. So the relationship that we have in this country is complex. I love my country. I want my country to do better in these things. But it is certainly a complex relationship. And I want to ask all of you, I want to invite all of you just to think a little bit about what it's like to live in this country in a different group than the one in which you belong to. So thanks so much for being here today. This is a really important message to me. So please do me a really huge favor and share this on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also rate this podcast, leave comments for this podcast, and I will see you tomorrow. What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie, and for over 15 years, I've worked with hundreds of thousands of counselors to support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday lives, and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today I want to continue to talk about Black History Month and kind of wrap up this topic in a way that I think matters and is very important. I opened up Facebook the other day and I saw like somewhere in Tennessee, there was this like massive book ban. Like they banned some books that are kind of about the civil rights movement. And then here in my own home state where I live of Texas, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there was more book bans. And I just thought like how dangerous this is. I really sat and I thought about like how ironic it is that it's Black History Month. And I think it's important that we take learning and education seriously. Like we can't just dedicate a month to learning the history of people that are so culturally relevant to this country. We have to really learn and spend time engaged in learning the stories and the history and the contributions of what people have made to this country who aren't the normal, what everybody expects, like the white European American. The story of the Black person in America is relevant, it's profound, and it's not all positive. We shouldn't be banning the history and short-circuiting, or we shouldn't be banning the history and shortchanging people's ability to learn about that history. You know, there's an old saying, I'm sure you've heard it before, if you don't learn your history, you are doomed to repeat it. And I'm afraid that we're going to create a generation of people who aren't aware of the pain, trauma, and struggles that the Black community has experienced in this country. And I don't think that people should learn those things so they should feel guilty or feel bad or feel sympathy or remorse or any of those things. The primary reason that we should be learning about the history of our neighbors, like literally of our neighbors, like people within our community, people who have contributed to this country. The primary reason why we need to learn their history is so that we don't repeat the mistakes made by previous generations. It scares me that we only dedicate 1 month to Black History Month because it gives the idea of othering. It gives the idea that Black history is not American history, like it's a subset. But Black history is American history. Slavery is American history. Oppressive laws to Black people in the American South is American history. And so too is the civil rights movement. And so too is all of the things that have happened to overcome those plights. That is all American history. And we need to study it as such. We need to grow and learn as a community and a culture so that we don't ignore our past only to doom ourselves to to repeat those same mistakes. We need to be dedicated to living in a society where people can feel safe and people can experience justice and where people can experience rightness regardless of the color of their skin. That's going to require learning. That's going to require that we are aware that not everybody in this country has the same history. And some people that have been brought to this country were brought to this country against their will. And that fact still impacts how their descendants live their lives. We need to be aware of that. To try to erase that history is a mistake. To try to erase that history will doom us. To try to erase that history will create a generation of people who are unaware of the societal and long-lasting impact of oppression. So these book bans scare me, like they're so dangerous, because we need to always remember that oppression, that racial oppression and hatred and treating people as if they are others and lower class citizens has long-term impact, has generational impact. And the best weapon we have against that impact is education. That's the most prominent, most proficient, most profound weapon we have against that negative impact is education. And I think we need to remember that. As these book bans happen, it just makes my stomach turn, and I hope it does yours too. So as we go through the month of February, which here in America is Black History Month, I want you to carry it beyond February. I want you to remember that we have a duty to learn about the experiences of all of the people who don't look, walk, talk, and act like you, because that is how we become good neighbors, and that is how we ensure that no one goes through those difficult plights ever again. Listen, thanks so much for being here today. Please do me a huge favor and share this podcast on your social media platforms, or at least one person that you think could benefit from this message today. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave comments. I love reading your comments. Leave feedback, rate this podcast, and I will see you on Monday.